Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tradesmen Talks, where we talk about ways you can grow your existing home service business, or ideally, you starting your home service business sooner than later. And today, we specifically want to talk about what that might look like, whether you have made some progress and you're on the up and up with starting your business, or if you're not quite taking action like you know you should. There's some importance around having a vision for what that actually looks like for you within the business. So a question comes up: are you a business owner, or are you someone that has a high paying job within your business? Are you doing everything in the business? And is it weighing you down? Is it overwhelming you? Or do you have a business that can be somewhat self sufficient with or without you in the day to day operations? And so we'll go a little bit deeper into what that means and how you as well could have a business that operates much more smoothly without you in it than you trying to run around like a chicken with its head cut off.
Can you walk away and still get paid?
Absolutely. Can you leave the business for a week and come back and it's still running?
Yeah,
So before we get into that, though, how was your week?
it was. It's good, man. I don't know if I told you this. The truck blew up again. So thanks Chevrolet. But
Like
uh,
literally, I know we recently talked. I don't know what number this is.
yeah, dude, me either. I've lost count. So bought the truck, lifter blew, took it in, lifter blew, took it in, lifter blew. So I just found out they found a brand new engine. So that the warranty I
Oh,
got on that truck just got me a brand new 0 mile engine with a 100,000 mile warranty. So yeah, I came out ahead. So it's now a good week. I am vehicleless for another 2 weeks, which is uh, normally not an issue because my significant other has a car, but she's traveling right now. So it's just me and the dog
mhm.
walking everywhere. It brings me back to my college days.
Well, hopefully that gets fixed once and for all.
Yeah, man, I hope so too. How was your week?
It was good. Got some things done. I've been in Orlando most of the week, working with a referral partner of ours, getting some of their stuff worked out and figuring out how to expand our relationship with this referral partner. They own a custom cabinet shop, and working with him on setting up ways we can get his stuff done a lot faster
Nice.
and still get it done without not doing other jobs. And
Right.
so kind of expanding our capacity, even with the people that we currently have. And so the lights at the end of the tunnel with that, we think we're gonna get it figured out. But the week's been going good. Supposedly I'm going on a trip tomorrow. It's my birthday this weekend.
Allegedly.
Yeah, my girlfriend says she planned something, and it's somewhat of a surprise. It's not a complete surprise because I have to, be proactive with the schedule and some commitments that I already had for
Right.
tomorrow. So I got to figure out what I'm still able to do. But she said something about a train, so I assumed we were flying, but I guess we're going on a train somewhere. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, man. Surprise trips are always great. It's just I've always told my girlfriend I was like, hey, we can do surprises. I don't need to know anything about it except for when I need to take off. And if that ruins the surprise, then so be it. Because life.
Yeah, I mean
Trains
it'll
are
be a
cool.
surprise maybe up till tonight,
Yeah,
but
I've never thought about the fact that there are probably passenger trains in Florida. I just think of Europe when I think of passenger trains.
oh yeah, man, and there's like luxury ones. I came across this random video on YouTube where this guy like tours different trains and whatnot, and they they build these things out to be like five-star hotels that move within train cars. And I don't know if I've ever even been, I don't think I've been on a train before, but it sounds like a an adventurous way to go on a vacation.
The 5-star version does. We had a flight get canceled one time in New Jersey, and I think we caught a train from Newark down to DC, and 1 out of 5 stars would not recommend. But
I've seen some that go across the country and they have, restaurants in there. They serve meals all day. They have your own private bedrooms
Yeah, see, that sounds great.
and everything, and it's really not that expensive when you compare flying somewhere.
Right.
And it's kind of its own experience too. So we'll see how it goes, but week's been going pretty good. I'm excited for next week to look back at the progress we made this week,
Well, it's
especially with the investment properties, man. It's well, you've been dealing with this as well with your own,
yeah.
but I am more, newly in this type of project, and it's the hardest part is being patient. that is that is something I'm so used to having a lot more control over the progress that I make,
Hmm.
for better or worse. I'm still, have a high degree of influence on what I do or what gets done, with things that I'm involved in. But with these investment properties, you're really relying on these contractors, and you find yourself not meeting deadlines or meeting expectations, and so I'm just stepping back, reeling it in a little bit on the expectation part, and just kind of going with the flow more so than anything. And I trust they will eventually be done.
And
And yeah.
it's kind of a hard thing because, since we work with contractors and, by all definition of the word, are contractors. I don't always think of myself as a contractor, but it's I hate bad mouthing contractors. And so when they miss a timeline by several weeks, or when I pay them money up front and then find out nothing got done, it's like it's so frustrating. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You think there'd be a
Thought we were on
contractor.
the same team.
Yeah, you think there's a contractor's code, like take care of your own, brother. Like what's going on? But it doesn't work that way. Although you have the blessing of being there. The first three contractors we hired, I was remote, and that was they came highly recommended, and I will never do that again.
Oh, I can't imagine. I'm so glad I started this journey with houses that I'm in a market that I'm very familiar with, within neighborhoods that I've been in. Like it's my hometown,
Right.
and so I'm able to be a lot more present than if I were to try to do this remotely. Dude, it would be a nightmare. It's obviously possible. There's plenty of
Yeah.
people you can point to that do this remotely, but it requires a much different set of expectations and ability to manage your emotions, because I'm the type of guy that I will show up and make sure you're doing what you say you're going to do.
Right.
And if I'm able to do that, I will certainly elect to do that. And whereas if you're doing stuff remote, you just don't have that ability. And so by adapting to circumstance, you're required to be a little bit more forgiving.
Yep.
And so for better or worse, I am able to be present, but it is exciting to see the process and to look at the before and afters. And it'll be a lot more exciting once we start selling the houses.
Right.
But progress is always good to see, fun to see.
Yeah, the most exciting part is always when the cash gets collected. Uh, we were we were talking about this a little bit earlier. We had some crazy things happen at the shop this week. We had some contractors that we're working with that are, again, they're not doing it on purpose, but making our lives way harder. And so
Okay.
there's a little bit of stress. And one of the tough things with owning a business, especially when you're small, is you don't really get sick days, right? When you get sick, you just feel like crap and keep working. And there are exceptions. I mean, obviously, if you're dying, you got to take a break. But we have enough things going around that it's not always feasible for Logan to just take 2 days off, 3 days off. So a little bit sick. You got this contractor. It's kind of giving him a bunch of trouble. And I was like, well, man, how are you feeling? He's like, I don't know. I got to go collect a check for a job we just finished, and I have a sales call. He's not feeling bad anymore, just like still tired. And I was like, okay, well, collecting cash is one of the best ways to make your day better. Came out of there. I was like, yeah, man, just closed an $8,000 deal. How you feel? He's like, I feel better. I'm like, yeah, it works. It's the cash part's the best part. But that's kind of the interesting segue into what we want to talk about today, because the challenges that you're faced as an early business owner, which is the fact that you have to wear all the hats and you basically always have to be on call and you always have to be responsible, is the thing that you're trying to work your way out of. if you have a long-term vision.
Yeah.
Although in
I
this
think that's
industry,
something a lot of contractors maybe have the goal of owning a business. People get into building their own business for different reasons, of course.
yep,
Some are motivated, at least, by having a story in their head about the owners that they have worked with in the past, or the bosses or the managers that they've
right,
worked for in the past. And so they might have an idea that the boss or the manager or the owner has a certain work life balance or has a certain level of involvement that is required every single day. And it certainly changes with the circumstances, but usually there's a gap in awareness around what the business owner is actually having to do in order to not have to be on that job site or not have to be as present as you think they should be. Having a business versus owning a business where you have to do a lot of the day-to-day work is very different, two
right,
different things. And you might find yourself starting off in a labor intensive role. And we have talked about the benefits of actually doing that. I certainly started that way, and doing everything yourself so that you can better delegate it or delegate things better. And if you have that as a goal and you're not constantly working towards that, it eventually can start to fade. That goal can start to seem unrealistic because you feel like you're so busy as the technician, or there's so many things on your plate. You either believe you don't have enough money to grow the business a little bit more, or you don't have the time, or you don't have the knowledge. Of course, all of those things can be addressed, and those problems can be solved. But if you're not constantly working towards getting to the point to where you have the choice of working in the business as much as you want, then you're really not serving yourself as much as you could be.
yep. Well, there's also like there's two parts to that because I think a lot of times when you're making the transition, like you work for somebody, and I hear people say, "Yeah, I want to start my own business because I'm tired of making somebody else rich."
Right.
And that's a legitimate reason. Or like I'm working all the time, my boss doesn't do anything, and a lot of times I think what you said is really important because they don't see all the stuff the boss is doing on the back end, but they also don't see all the money and energy that the boss invested to get to that point. Because we see a lot of people they go to hire, they bring somebody on, and they're like, "I'm not making any money. I made more money when I was by myself." And it's like, yeah,
Right.
like when you hire somebody, you're probably losing money for the first 2 months until they start to be proficient enough to take care of themselves. And so if you can't have the long-term vision, you're not going to overcome that. Or, there are cases where people are like, yeah, the boss is making all this money. It's like, yeah, but if you saw what the boss's expenses look like on a monthly basis, it would give you a panic attack.
Yeah. And it's tough because some of these opinions that are self-destructive, these opinions we might have about people, though part of it might be true, there's usually a lot more to the equation that is also true.
Yep.
And these partial truths get us in trouble so many times because our logic and our rationale can see evidence and justification for having the opinion about something. We can see evidence that supports our opinion, but we aren't looking for evidence that supports an even bigger opinion that includes theirs. And
Right.
so they're looking at a different situation as if it's something different, but it's that and then some. The boss is having to do with maybe what you believe the boss should be doing, and then some.
Right.
There's so much more that you don't know. And a lot of times, we've said this before, we don't know what we don't know. And it can take a lot of energy and willpower to try to replace all of that ignorance, to expand our awareness. It takes a lot of energy to do that.
Yep.
And a lot of people don't make that choice. They don't make that investment. They rather be okay with their opinion. Here's reasons 1, 2, and 3. That's good. I'm going to stick with that. Here's my conclusion. And now I'm going to go and react off of that without realizing that there's a lot more that can change your conclusion. And so it's something that we can get in trouble with sometimes. So if you're an employee and you're looking at your boss, there's probably a lot to learn from that person. And if they appear to not be working very hard, learning how they're able to appear that way is probably worth discovery as well.
Yep.
You know, the negative opinions you may have towards someone in authority, you know, use that as a spark for curiosity.
Well, it's funny because there aren't that many cases of people that are their boss and don't do any work at all. I'm sure it exists, but in my
Oh,
experience, most bosses
absolutely.
work. But it's hard because you look and go, I'm working so hard. He's not, and it's like, yeah, but it's really hard to say that when you're not factoring in the risk, right? Like
Right.
there is something. It's like what's the show? There's a show about Alaskan crab catchers, right? And these guys are on the most dangerous catch. These guys are out on this wicked, crazy boat. And these guys will fly off the edge. And these storms, like, they're gone. That's it. Bye bye. They have one of the highest death rates of any job. And so that dude's a fisherman,
Yeah.
right? They make a lot of money. But if somebody on like another boat, in a lake somewhere, fish for bass was like, how come I'm not getting paid any money doing bass fishing when this guy's making all this money on this boat? It's like, have you seen that boat? Like, do you actually know what it's like to be out in the ocean? Because you're not comparing an apples to apples situation.
And away from your family for weeks on end.
Yeah. Well, as a business owner, sometimes you're away from your family for long periods of time. As a business
Right.
owner, you're taking risks that can hurt. And so, you may not see all of the risks and all the challenges that person's gone through in order to get to that point. And that gap stops a lot of guys from ever making that leap, which is, one of the big things I want to see more contractors do is recognize, like, on the other side of that storm, there is a really, really good position to be in. Like, you can set up a situation for yourself as an owner of a business where you have people that manage the business for you, where you have people that handle the sales, and you have people that handle the delivery, and you have a asset that produces money that you don't have to spend a ton of time in, relatively speaking, so long as you took the right risks along the path to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of risk that is being propped up and carried on the shoulders of these business owners. And having ignorance at the beginning can serve us as well.
Yep.
There's certainly two sides to this coin of ignorance because we can make positive assumptions or negative assumptions as far as whether these assumptions serve us or not.
Yep.
And, being delusional with your optimism can be very helpful, but being delusional with your pessimism cannot be. But I would guess that a lot of people would really hesitate to make the bet on or the decision on becoming a business owner if they really felt what it feels like to be a business owner at times
Right.
and the sacrifices that are required. But every person that does become their idea of success usually never regrets all of that sacrifice and hard work
For sure.
because it still gets them to a more safe position where they may have a lot more responsibilities, but they have a lot more capacity to handle it at that point in time, usually. And that's why, people who get success overnight, they don't have the capacity to manage it. And that's why a lot of times they lose it really quick. Look at these lottery winners. Look at these people that become successful in one way or another very quickly.
Musicians,
They haven't
athletes.
it's not a matter of morally earning it. It's actually the development of skills and awareness and decision making that becomes your skill set over time.
Yeah.
And if that training isn't put in, then those tools don't exist for you. And so you end up making the wrong decisions that don't serve you over the long term. And so we really do encourage people to start off with a very high level of involvement, and that might be required because their choices are very limited at the very beginning. You may not have a ton of resources where you can go and hire a bunch of people at the beginning, but knowing that it is very much possible for you to end up with a team that becomes sufficient and can be operating without your day-to-day involvement, or at least at the same level as the beginning of your journey.
Well, the other thing to look at with So obviously, you have to go through all those challenges. All of those challenges are risks, right? But we as humans engage in risks all the time. And so I never want somebody to hear this and go, oh man, there are all these risks and you have to worry about all these expenses and there are all these challenges. Like, yeah, but dude, driving a car is inherently very dangerous and we do it all the time. How do you do it? Well, it's risky to be in a giant batch of metal going 60 miles an hour. So you mitigate the risk
It's
by
crazy if you think about it, bro.
it's super.
Sometimes, like, it's so that's this is an example of how awareness can hurt or help you, because if you're fully aware of how risky it is while you're driving 80 miles an hour down, a 7-lane highway,
Right.
and we are blindly trusting each other to not cross this 4-inch wide line of paint.
And half of them are on TikTok.
More than half of them are on their phone.
Yeah, it's
The
terrifying.
others are blacked out from being in their minds,
Mhm.
thinking. And so it's like extremely risky, but
Right.
we do it every day.
But we've mitigated some of that risk, and that's what's so funny because if you took somebody that had never been in a car before and you put them on the interstate, please pray for everybody else on that road, right? It's going to be a terrible thing. And so you mitigate the risk by doing things like driver's ed, right? Now they're mitigating the risk by putting automatic braking systems into these cars. Like, oh, you're too busy on TikTok, it'll brake for you. And so what's
Yeah.
cool about building a business is you're going to have to overcome all of those risks, but you can mitigate those risks, right? You can
Absolutely.
mitigate those risks by planning ahead, by learning, whether it's a mentorship like what we do with people, or even if it's reading books. Like one of the books that you recommend pretty regularly, the E-Myth, we've had
Yeah.
several guys reach
By
out to us
Michael Gerber.
afterwards, be like, that book changed my life. That book can be the risk mitigation that you need to be able to make these decisions. Because if
Yeah.
you
If you're a type of person that needs to understand things before you take action, which, is a lot of people, myself included at times, reading that book, The E Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, it will change your life in terms of how you look at business. And it will provide a level of simplicity and clarity that can really motivate you to take action because you will feel like you understand how a business can operate and grow.
yep. One of the things that he talks about that I think is one of the big separators, and we deal with this with a lot of painters. I bring this up and I bring it up again and again and again. The last stat I saw, 35% of painters have a website. Okay, that is bananas to me. But when you look at one of the things it says in that book is if you're going to have a big business, you have to set your small business up like it is a big business, right? You have to do all the things a big business would do in order to become a big business. And so a lot of business owners, they put off a lot of this work. They put off making the changes and adjustments they would need because they can get away with it, right? It's like, well, I'm not big, so I don't have to have these systems in place. But the reality is you're never going to get big, right? If you don't have a website, you're going to probably have a hard time scaling to a certain degree. You may be able to keep yourself busy, but you're going to have a hard time scaling. If you don't
Yeah,
have
that's like
systems,
someone saying they're scared to work out because they don't want to get too big. Like,
yeah. Or
not applying these systems.
or I'll start working out once I have muscles. Like,
Right. Right.
right.
Like
All right.
not applying organization and clear intention into your business because you're concerned about growing bigger than you want it is an excuse, and it's a horrible excuse to not take action. I mean, really defining the roles within your business, and at the very beginning, you only have one role. And so it's not like you need to dedicate 2 weeks of 12-hour days to really decipher every function of the business. You're still learning because you're still developing and learning. You're not even able to create a whole comprehensive standard operating procedure for your business. But if you can start to develop the proper habits like documentation with your customers, project management, using an online tool rather than a written out calendar, using a website. Like there's very elementary steps that you can take and should take before you start thinking about some of the complex things that you will be confronted with later on, but that will come in due time. When you need the complexity, it will show up, but we want to prevent ourselves from bringing it on too early. At the very beginning, we want to keep things simple, but we just urge you to have that end goal in mind to have a business that becomes self-sufficient with or without you, so that you end up with a cash flowing machine that can pay you and your family for time to come, or it gives you an entity that is actually sellable, that you can sell to the market for a multiple on your revenue, and you could take a big lump sum and go, do whatever you want in your next phase of life. But starting with that organization is key.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, it's and we talk about goal setting and planning a lot, but it really is crucial. It's like, if you want to be a 7-figure business, if you want to make $1 million a year, sit down and ask yourself, what would a 7-figure business be doing that I'm not doing? And make a list of everything. And then I bet at least half that list is stuff that you could probably do, and you probably wouldn't have to spend a lot of money on it. We talked about guys using a CRM. We've taught a lot of people how to use Trello as a CRM for free. And you did that till your business was doing over $1 million a year. That was what you used.
Oh yeah, I still use the free version
for sales.
I use apps that I pay through Asana.
Okay.
But I don't pay Trello.
I thought you guys were using HubSpot for your sales CRM, but I could be wrong.
Oh, for the CRM, yes. Yeah, sorry. We are. We're using the free version of HubSpot as well.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go.
We use that. I pay for Zapier.
Right.
We have some integrations, but I still use the free version of HubSpot.
Yeah. So a great example, right? $1 million business right here, found a free application to solve that instead of making an excuse. And a lot of these guys just like, oh, it's an excuse and it's an expense. And it doesn't have to be. And it's the function of looking at, okay, well, if there's all these things you could be doing, but you're actively choosing not to, the secondary problem to consider is people like, well, I'm not doing that because I'm not big enough yet. It's like, dude, if you did these things, you would be making way more money. Because I know guys that aren't tracking their sales in their CRM, they're losing so much money because they just forget to call people, or they forget to follow up, or they just forget to reach out in general. Like, you have to have a system. Guys that aren't using a project management tool, their projects take longer because they forget stuff. It's just like, all of that is money that you're throwing away.
Absolutely. And you're not serving yourself by building a business that's going to be able to work for you later on.
Right. Yeah. It's weird because I think a lot of people justify not doing those things because they don't have time. Actually, I don't want to throw under the bus too much, but it's actually a funny story. My girlfriend has her own business, and she was doing payroll, and she brought over a piece of paper to me, and she said, "Hey, can you double check these numbers?" Sure. What are they? She's like, "Oh, these are all the hours for payroll." And she had me add them up on a calculator. Said, how often do you run payroll? She's like, every week. I'm like, and how many of these sheets do you have to do? She's like, at least 5. I was like, why aren't you using a spreadsheet? This you could just type it in one time and it could be done. She's like, I don't have time to set that up. And I'm like, it takes an hour to set up, and it would save you 4 hours a month. I mean, it's a one-time thing. You know what I mean? And once that clicked, she was like, oh. And it's weird, since that, she has a lot of things now where she has really forced her time back because she had that awakening moment. But there's lots of times, and I'm guilty of this too, I have done it, we do things the hard way because we don't have time to fix it. But that hour to fix it could buy us literally 100 hours over the next 3 months.
Yeah, I have definitely caught myself doing things the hard way over the more strategic way. But if you catch yourself, that's phenomenal. But a lot of people, if you catch yourself, you still do it anyways. Yeah. Because it might feel good, or it might feel easier than stopping what you're doing, because maybe you're like, oh, well, I already started. There's momentum behind it. There's a really good book called what's it called? The War of Art.
Okay.
Where it talks, I wish I can remember the author. I evidently should take a read of it again.
I got you. Real time.
It talks about the resistance, that internal resistance that can come up when we are working on a goal. And if you approach the goal with a little bit less seriousness, it can create a little less pressure and even a little less internal resistance. But a lot of times that thing that you're resisting to do is something that you should be doing. And if you can fight or push aside that internal resistance or recognize it as a trick that your mind is playing on you, and you can push through that, it can develop a new way of reacting to that feeling in the future. It won't be so easy to just keep doing what you're aware of you not supposed to be doing. You could actually catch yourself, shift your attention, and go in the right direction. And so it's something that people can develop over time. I'm getting better at it, but I can imagine at a time I wasn't aware of it at all. And I was doing things way harder just because it was maybe a little less, it was kind of the path of least resistance
Right.
sort of thing, but it wasn't serving me in the long run.
Stephen Pressfield.
I should have remembered his name.
I forget authors all the time. Oh, man, if you read a pretty fair amount, it's hard to remember. They all.
It was a while I read that book. I actually read that book before I started Elite Cabinet Coding. So it's safe to imagine that it played a big part in motivating me to take action. I read that book when I was still working for the little business in Tampa.
Which you now own and is no longer a little business.
Yeah. Yeah, we were able to acquire it and develop it much further.
Yeah, we should do a podcast just on that story, like how I bought the shop I worked at and then 10x'd it in 8 months.
Yeah. That was a big shift for me when we were able to transform that business just using the systems that we currently have. But that's the power of what business owners are able to do when they put the work in at the beginning. They really define the business and they develop standard operating procedures around every part of the business so that they can train people. That's all the standard operating procedures should be focused on, is enabling you to train people in an effective way or in fast way. It's not some corporate book that is meant to confuse people and just check off some list on compliance or something. It's not an HR tool. SOPs, standard operating procedures, are so that you can get out of the business. If you don't have standard operating procedures, you don't really have a reliable way to step out of the business. It's always going to be dependent on you if you don't train people to do things without you. And standard operating procedures, if exist, then you can even delegate the training to someone else. So you're not even having to use that book or those procedures to train people. You're just going to be checking in to make sure the procedures are being implemented properly.
Well, it's having that knowledge though, right? Like the SOPs are it's the distillation of everything that you figured out, what works and what doesn't. And a lot of times, like when you took over the business in Tampa, it was like, yeah, you threw in all these SOPs, but you also had a lot of knowledge about outside things you could bring into the business. Like, hey, this is how we're going to market. This is how we're going to change sales process. And that knowledge enabled you to blow up much faster. It's like, you're going to have to learn that somewhere. One of my favorite stories, I cannot remember the guy's name. It's Charles something. It sounds German, Steinmetz. But there's a lot of wives' tales about this event, but it was a real thing this guy did. Henry Ford had one of his machines that wasn't working, and so the whole shop was down, and they were losing thousands of dollars a day. And so he paid General Electric to have their top engineer come over, and this guy literally sat in front of this thing for like a day and a half, knocked on it a couple times, listened to some things, drew a piece of chalk, and said, "Cut that out, replace that gear." Boom, shop's back up, money's coming back in, everybody's happy. And so they sent Henry Ford an invoice for $10,000. And he got pissed because this is like 1920. $10,000 back then would be like, Steven, if I sent you a $150,000 invoice for a day of work, right? And so he's like, I want an itemized invoice. And the guy sent him an invoice that said $1 for chalk and $9,999 for knowing where to use it. The end, right? And you can't argue with it, right? The reason people have sharks on Shark Tank, pay them all the money, like they buy into their business and they usually get very good deals. The sharks get great deals because they know that the shark is going to help that business blow up. The information they bring to the table is far more valuable than the money.
And having that person you can go to really give you clarity and offer perspective and provide feedback. Having someone like that can be a huge help for sure. I certainly had characters like that, not directly in my industry, but one of my biggest curiosities were around how we can apply solutions within people's businesses to my own.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I got phone's connected to the computer. But how can I take what they're doing within their business, whether it's for customer acquisition, for scaling operations, for hiring and training new hires? How can I apply those solutions to my own business? Now, the book E-Myth gave me a whole structure on how to fill in the blanks, but what I filled in within those blanks was from my own observations, from my experiences, from my lessons that I've sought from solutions and teachings from other people. And so anyone can do that if they are willing to.
Yes.
And just having that understanding at the very beginning, you don't have to really clearly know exactly what you're going to do, but if you just understand that having standard operating procedures written out as you build the business, you'll never regret it. Absolutely not.
Yeah. I think, one thing that's kind of cool related to that is as you're going out and you're working through and you're building this and you're going and you're going to make these mistakes, like I think that very frequently, at least in my life, the smartest people I know are not the richest people I know. The richest people I know are the ones that were persistent and very focused on moving in a direction. So pick a goal, commit to
and
it.
they make other people rich.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
That's the big distinction that I see with successful business owners and certainly ultra wealthy individuals is they are not only rich, but their system, their entities that they've developed and created with other people are designed to make other people rich. The people within those systems, the people playing the game, get rich off of playing the game. And that's what we have to incentivize as business owners. We certainly have to have a structure for our own self-management, and we need a business that can generate cash flow. But the way we facilitate a team within that business is by making that business a vehicle in which is getting everyone else in closer to their goal. That business is a vehicle that will help you get to your goal, certainly closer to it, as well as the people within that business. And if you aren't having specific ways or clear paths for growth in place for the people that you hire, you're going to find yourself hiring people all the time. People are going to quit if they don't have a path for growth, if they don't have a long-term opportunity. And if you're hiring people who don't want a long-term opportunity, well, then you're going to find yourself also replacing them, because as soon as their short-term needs are met, which typically is, they got to pay this bill or that bill, once they put a little bit of extra money in their pocket, they're going to be gone.
Right.
And so you're really providing that growth plan for people is huge. Incentivizing your team to keep growing and improving is extremely important.
Yeah. Dead-end jobs attract dead-end people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've got another call coming up. We'll probably wrap it up. If you guys liked anything you heard on the podcast today, find somebody that's a contractor and share it with them. Right?
Yeah. Can you tag people on YouTube?
I have no idea.
Comments?
My YouTube game's weak. I'm gonna improve.
Well, send this to someone that you believe can benefit from hearing this. Whether they want to start their own business or they currently have their business. We were talking a little bit about how to design a business that you own rather than a business that owns you, that requires your day-to-day involvement, that isn't self-sufficient with or without you. We're really going into detail about how to build out the business with structure, with organization, so that you can train people effectively and you can incentivize them to grow the business and get closer to their own goals. And the byproduct is you getting closer to your own goals as well. And it becomes a business that you can eventually sell or keep as a cash flow income stream for you. So if you guys have any more questions or would like some clarity on any part of that, please don't hesitate to send us an email at support@cabinetstartup.com. Regardless of what trade you're in, we can certainly provide some guidance, and we'd be happy to hear about where you're at in your business and where you're trying to go. So with that, guys, I hope to see you guys again, same place, same time next week. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, buddy.